Hi, and welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast, co-hosted by Abby Thiering, the Badass Breastfeeder, and Dianne Cassidy, IBCLC.
Hey, we are the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. I'm Dianne, the lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby,
the
Badass Breastfeeder.
Yes. And you guys already know that. But just in case we have a new listener, maybe we have a new listener today that wants to know who's
plus you have to associate because they don't necessarily know my voice or your voice. They don't know our voices, so they have to know who's who.
And we are going to talk today, this is very important, about sex after baby. So
you're excited.
Yes.
You're all tuning in because you saw the title, Sex After Baby, and you're like, oh, I'm going to click on that.
So here, and Abby and I know we sound like we're totally put together. So what really happens is we go, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. Yes, this is what we're going to talk about. And I'm telling Abby my whole experience with sex after baby. And she's like, why are we not recording this right now? So you're going to get a whole totally off the cuff, not that we ever not talk off the cuff, but you're going to get a whole off the cuff conversation about sex after baby, not even just how we feel about it. But I mean, I've been working with new mothers for 10 years. I could tell you things that you would not believe about sex after baby.
So here's what happened. So we have this list of things that we're going to talk about, and Dianne and I do not speak before the podcast. We know the topic. The topic is usually 2 or 3 words. When to wean was last week. Sex after baby is this week. This is as far as we have spoken about it. And then we turn it on and we see what happens. And so before we turn it on today, Diane's like, I have to tell you, I didn't really want to have sex after I had a baby. I don't really want to, because she thought I was going to we were going to launch into this whole thing about how awesome sex is after baby. And I was like, turn on the recorder because this is exactly what the conversation is. Yeah. It's like what you're saying is like what everyone else is saying, which in their head, but nobody's saying out loud because there's so many emotions wrapped up in sex to begin with. And then this baby comes tearing out of our vagina. And
nothing will ever be the same.
No, I know. And let me just, let me just tell you my story.
Okay.
So I had my first son at 35 years old. Not that that matters, but I'm married to my husband, married him for a long time. And, so I had, I was all, liked sex as much as anybody else. And so I had Jack in a pretty traumatic hospital birth. I mean, we're all fine, but it was,
Mm-hmm. And you've talked openly about having to have a episiotomy and a long healing, and you bled for months. It was traumatic.
That's what all those details need to be in there. You're right. So I had an episiotomy. The doctor couldn't even tell if I was starting my period or not because I was still bleeding so much from the birth. And I had this, I was so freaked out by this episiotomy. I used to go, first of all, I had this feeling that my vagina was still the opening of Jack's head size. I felt like when I sat down to go to the bathroom that my lungs were going to fall out my vagina. It was just this open thing now. And I had this mirror, you're always you're spraying with a Perry bottle, you're trying to clean down there. And I had this mirror in the bathroom and I was like, I cannot look.
No.
I can't look. Oh my God, I can't. It's too scary. And so that went on for a few weeks. But by the way, at this point, sex was not on my mind. And the doctor probably said you should wait, blah, blah, blah time. I didn't hear her because she said the word sex and I just looked at her and I didn't know what the word meant. I was like, what? And I took this. One day I took this mirror and I put it down underneath me and I saw the crazy sights of my vagina at that point.
The crazy sights.
And the first thought in my mind was, well, that's never being used again.
Oh my.
That is down. Those stitches are basically a police line. Do not cross. This is done. It's over. My sex life is over. It's done. It was the scariest thing. It was so bloody and it was so, stitches in your vagina. That's not a fun thing. Mm-mm. And I went on I was terrified to have sex. And so I start to heal, literally months later. And, my husband also was like, no, thank you. This is what, we had sex and this is what it led to. I our house is like complete disaster. Like our lives are upside down. Like, no, we can't, nothing good comes from sex. Never again. And so then, I go to the doctor after like a few months and she's like, okay, everything, it's healing really well. And she's like, have you had sex yet? And I'm like, no. And she's like, okay, so, that's great. You should totally let yourself heal first. And she's like, but you might want to try it now before you wait too long, because then you might develop a complex about it. Like
you don't already have one?
And I'm just looking at her like, I've got this complex is in full force. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, because this is like, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. And I don't even remember. I have a blog post about this, and I remembered better then how soon it was. But I made myself do it. I think it was within 6 months, maybe 6 months. I don't know. And it actually wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be. But I wasn't all like, ooh, I was kind of like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh God, is this going to hurt? Oh my God, what's going to happen?
Can't relax.
No, I could not relax. And then, we very quickly went into, we were like never having a child again. And then, then you forget, because the human race wouldn't exist if people didn't forget like childbirth and the first few months of having a newborn. And so we forgot, and then we were like, oh yeah, we totally should have another child. And so that just went into right into that type of sex where you're just trying to have a baby, which is different from the just like, oh God, let's make sure not to get pregnant. And we're just so, hot and heavy right now. We're just going to do it.
Right.
Well, it's just like, okay, ovulating, let's go. Time to clock in.
Yeah.
And we just, pretty much we've decided this is it. We're not having any more kids. And so, with small children, you're trying to figure out how to like have joyful sex again. Not joy. I mean, how to like do it so that it's different. It's just different when you're doing it for fun than when you're doing it to have babies. It's
right.
It's a different mindset.
It's a very different mindset. And then after you have a baby, there's a lot going on. And this is another thing that nobody talks about, and it's like everybody kind of, when you're pregnant, and especially like when I do childbirth classes and stuff like that, we kind of touch on postpartum stuff and when should you have sex and blah, 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 all this stuff. You should wait 6 weeks. Please wait at least 6 weeks. Don't be upset if she wants to wait longer than 6 weeks. Because sometimes dads are like, all right, the clock is ticking here. We're at, 5 weeks, 59 minutes or whatever. And I really want to, get this going. Mm-hmm. But you're tired. You might have to, you're still healing. You are still healing. Again, I say this all the time. I don't know who made up this 6-week rule for everything, but you are still healing at 6 weeks. So it's like you're tired. You feel like, I don't know if I want to even be naked. I feel like I've got baby weight still.
And getting touched by more people. Like,
right. The baby's crying. There's milk. There's just like, there's all this stuff that you're feeling. And then on top of it, you're like, oh my God, if I get pregnant again, I'm going to be on my roof. Like, it's just, and you have a lot of women that are like in their last stages of pregnancy that are like, oh my God, I don't even want to think about sex right now. Yeah. And that's okay. That's a really normal feeling to have. And then you have people, these idiots that come up to you after you have a baby and you're still in the hospital and they're like, oh, so do you think you'll have more? Like, who does that?
Well, I'm never having sex again, so it's probably impossible for that to happen.
So it's something that like you have to have a conversation with your partner. So I have met women who have had sex by the time they went home from the hospital.
Okay.
And some of it is, well, I wanted to make my husband happy or my partner or whatever. Because like Abby was saying before we turned the recorder on, this is our job. Like, it's kind of,
Yeah, we live in this culture where women are so sexualized that it really becomes your role, right? And you feel whether, I think I kind of realize it now, and I feel it a little bit more now, but I'm sure I always felt it because it's just our culture that our job is to have sex, and that's part of, you have a responsibility in a marriage, to have sex kind of when your partner wants to, or don't let them go too long because they might get unhappy. And it's really the role, the woman carries the responsibility and a lot of the guilt and the shame that goes along with it. And the man kind of has the role of like, well, let's go. It's time. And, after I had Jack, and I remember like talking to women, and most of the women, honestly, most would say, oh, I couldn't wait to have sex again. We didn't make it to 6 weeks. We didn't even make it till that night. We didn't, and I'm going, oh my God. And I'm feeling like I'm the strange one, only to come out to find that I'm not the strange one. I'm just the one who's not really allowed to talk about not wanting to have sex, because really, who are you as a woman if you don't want to have sex? Like, well, wait a minute. That's what a marriage is. That's what you're supposed to be doing, and it's kind of a bunch of bull crap, I mean, it's not fair to a woman to put all that pressure on her after but especially after she's just had a baby.
Right. And I try to tell families, you almost have to go back to square one. Like you can't.
Square one meaning like before you ever had sex.
Right. Yes.
Not like the beginning of your relationship.
Exactly.
Like when you were 15 or however old you were.
Yeah. So it's like you have to kind of go back to, okay, now you've got this baby. You haven't been intimate in weeks and weeks. You haven't been alone together in weeks and weeks. You haven't even gone out together alone and held hands in weeks and weeks. And now you're supposed to like feel intimate and want to have sex when those hormones are crushed and like all of this stuff is going on. It's like, why don't you start by maybe trying to get out together by yourselves? Maybe having a conversation that doesn't include the baby. Maybe reconnecting on some level as a couple.
Yeah.
Before you try to jump into this place of having sex again. Because it just doesn't work like that.
Right. And I think we were just last week talking about when to wean and talking a little bit about like partner pressure when it comes to, this kind of thing. And this is where, this is another place where partner pressure might come up. And, my husband never pressured me. But there are a lot of men out there who will pressure their partner and maybe have pressured you. And I'm not, we don't even have to get into like the, scary, gory stuff about like being pressured. I mean, just kind of like, come on, baby, when, aren't you ready yet? Come on. It's been, this long. Mm-hmm. And men need to, partners, whatever your partner is, need to take some responsibility in this situation and let you heal and get to a place where you feel both physically and emotionally ready to have sex again.
Right. And there's a lot to it. And, and sometimes it's not just us, let's talk about the partner. They just saw you go through something completely out of this earth that they've never thought that they would see before. If they were there to witness everything, like a lot of partners really are hands-on and help even, catch the baby and do all, they might have a vision in their head that they're not completely comfortable with the sex piece yet either.
Right.
They might be tired too because they're getting up a lot. They might not want to hurt you. They might be afraid that they're going to hurt you. If it's a situation like Abby's where there was, a repair and it's extensive, and they might kind of feel like, well, I don't want to hurt you, so I don't want to. I'll wait for her to come to me for this. It's definitely worth keeping those lines of communication open and seeing where you feel about things as a couple.
Yeah, definitely. That was definitely for my husband was kind of like, especially the first time. The second time was not. The second time was, a situation where that we wanted to be in, that we, that was not traumatic and it was empowering and all that stuff. But even then, I was like, now we've got 2 kids and, a newborn again, and I'm tired.
Right.
And it was, and my husband was tired too.
Yeah.
You know what? He was well, after my first, like I said before, after my first, he was just as scared to have sex after that too. Because that was not a fun situation. And then, he saw all this go on and he was just like, I cannot like put her through anything else. I don't want to get into this situation again. I want to put her in any situation. I want to hurt her. And then, yeah, I know that I'm lucky to have a partner who will give me that space, as much space as I need. And even with this, and we talk about the newborn days, but let's, even as a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, I mean, like, I'm not on a weekly schedule where I'm like, ooh, let me put on my thigh highs. I mean, come on. I'm like,
oh my God, those days.
Like, just no. Later, I'm going to sleep. I got to go to sleep.
Right.
And we, and well, that's not, I was going to say we share a bed, but who cares? People are always like, oh, you can't have sex if you bed share, which is a bunch of crap.
I do hear that a lot of times, and obviously I do have a lot of families that bed share and who are on their second and third baby. And it's like, well, something happened along the way. So,
well, yeah. Did you ever go to college? I mean, you had like a perfect setup, like queen king size bed in college. I mean, no, you went to wherever you could go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I have a friend that always said that too. She'd be like, they have like a family bed. So they've got all the kids in the bed, everybody in the bed. And she's like, we've had sex in every room in this house.
Right.
Like that's just, they're, and that's not a bad thing either. But it also is very normal. I don't want anybody to think that they're like totally abnormal if they have not had a very active sex life since their baby's born and maybe their baby is 8, 9, 10, 12 months. That's okay too.
Yeah, that's totally normal. The thing is that people aren't talking about it because, like I said, I feel like there's a lot of guilt and shame that goes around with not wanting to have sex in this culture because it really is, like we were talking about, it really is the woman's role, right? I mean, it's really what we think this is what we're supposed to be doing. And so people don't want to say like, well, I'm just not in the mood. I just don't want to, and it's more like socially acceptable to be like, oh, yeah, I wanted to. I really wanted to right away. And so you're not alone. It's just that it's another one of those things that people just aren't comfortable talking about it. Because then it makes them feel like they're kind of, I don't know, less of a wife or less of a woman, and all these crappy thoughts that we have in our head.
I know. And that's, that's not the way. And hormones do play quite a role. When you're breastfeeding, hormones are different. And sometimes the sex drive just isn't the same when you are breastfeeding, especially, earlier on. And in addition to that, your body is a little bit different. So like vaginal lubrication might not be where it's supposed to be. And that might make things a little bit more uncomfortable. So it's like, whereas before maybe sex was very comfortable and you didn't have to worry about anything like that. Now it's not. And it is a little bit more painful and you feel a little bit drier and, what's happening. And it's like, a lot of that is just hormonal changes that are going on because your body is adapting to everything that's happened to it and needs to recover. And it doesn't happen in 6 weeks like everybody seems to think it does.
Yeah, right,
so
right.
You have to really consider healing time.
Yeah, 6 weeks. That some man came up with that. Some male doctor 50 years ago was like, like, how long can you wait without your head exploding? Okay.
I was in, and I couldn't even believe this, but when I was working in a hospital once, I remember going into a room and doing a discharge talk, a breastfeeding discharge talk with a mom. And the doctor was in there with them doing a little bit of a discharge thing. And I was just kind of like stood back and waited. And he said, and I'm not even kidding, he said, so no sex for a few weeks or for 6 weeks or whatever he said. He goes, unless of course it's Clinton sex.
Oh, I remember you telling me this.
Did I tell you that?
Yeah, you did.
And because I've never forgotten. I was just like, I can't. And they just kind of chuckled or whatever the parents did. And I'm like, I can't.
And what does that even mean again? I don't even remember.
Because Clinton had somebody giving him oral sex under the desk.
Oh God.
Yeah.
It's a really lovely situation for a mom to hear. Yeah.
Her on day 2 of postpartum. Like, and maybe he was just being funny, whatever.
See, that's the thing. That's not funny.
It's not
and
funny.
It's not okay to make jokes like that around a woman who just had a baby or ever. That's a stupid thing to say.
It was awful. So it's like, this is the expectation of in some people's world, that the sex still needs to happen in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily true.
No, it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
And, if they get all butthurt about it, then, that's a very, very telling thing maybe in your relationship, to where somebody maybe needs to be put in their place. Does that sound rude? I don't know. No, but they need to understand that, that's not your main role and that you have multiple roles. And this one is a priority right now. Your mother being, a healthy mother and relaxed and healing mother. That's how you are right now. And that's it.
But if you're sitting there listening to this podcast going, or you looked at the title of this podcast today and said, oh my gosh, sex after baby, like, I don't want to have sex. There's something wrong with me. Like, that's not the case at all. It's really normal. It's really normal to even be afraid. Like, is my husband going to like the way I look anymore? Now that is he only going to see me as a mother? I remember thinking that. Now I'm somebody's mother. So that totally changes the dynamic of our relationship. I'm somebody's mother now. How can I be sexy anymore?
Oh, girl. Oh, God. Yeah. That's a totally normal thought. Mm-hmm. But you will.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Get back to it. Like, it's not gone forever. But your body does this. It's not even just like, well, I'm just the kind of person who, goes through phases where they don't want to have sex. Like, when you've just had a baby, your body is telling you, your hormones and all this are all set up for a reason that you don't have that desire, that's not what your body wants to be doing right now.
Right. And sometimes, especially in a situation where, our partners do not sometimes get the whole process, like they're kind of outsiders looking in, and as much as they want to understand, they didn't go through it the way we did. So, and now they're in a situation where they're not breastfeeding the baby, they're not involved in the way you are, they already feel left out from that, they feel like the baby's not bonding to them, they've already gone back to work, they've done, like, and they need, whereas you might feel touched out, they might feel like they need to be touched because they're not having that interaction with the baby like you are all day. They're missing their wife, they're missing their, all of this stuff, and they're feeling lonely. So it's like you have to be open and talk about this, and it will it'll work itself out, but you have to be open and talk about this. And if partners, and it's okay to even say to him, this might be something that you really want right now, but I just don't think I can. I just need you to be patient a little while longer. And that's okay too.
It's also okay to say no. Yes. You don't have to sit there caressing his ego, like while you're, trying to explain that you need space and we need to focus on the baby right now. It's okay to just be like, no, not right now.
Abby thinks I'm too nice. So
no, it's also, it's not, but this is a thing that women do. Women are always smiling to make people happy, trying to put things nicely, trying to, this is the burden, having sex when we don't really want to, this is the thing. These are the things that we get trapped in as women in this culture. And it's helpful to recognize that sometimes so that you can say, okay, this is what I actually need right now. And, I'm saying no.
Right.
And it doesn't make you a bitch.
No,
it makes you a normal person. You don't owe anybody anything.
Absolutely not. You owe yourself recovery time. Right. Is what
you're the only person. Yeah. And your baby, you owe your baby like a mother, present mother.
Right. Yeah. And it's just not about anybody else but those two people.
Right.
And it's really important. And I think even you might not even feel like you're being pressured, but if you're worried about it, you're feeling pressured.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you might be one of those people who's like, no, my partner doesn't pressure me. It's fine. But if it's something that you're thinking about and you're worried about, you're feeling pressure.
Yeah. 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 I know. I remember used to just in general, before becoming a mom, becoming a mom brought me into all of this, like just becoming more aware of, you know, women's role in the culture, and, you know, then looking at myself and the way I acted with men, previous old boyfriends or whatever, you know, and it's like, wow, you know, I really went to great lengths to like please men. And I still do, just because, you know, there's times where I get trapped in that feeling of like, you know, I feel guilty about something, or I feel shame because I don't, you know, I'm not doing something the way that I'm, you know, I don't know, you know, expected to.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have to, I mean, I think that I don't know why becoming a mother made that more clear for me, I guess, but, you know, if you look deep into it, you're going to find ways that we do this to ourselves, that we exhaust ourselves these ways.
Well, I mean, having a baby is so empowering too, in its own way. And I mean, I definitely, if I, you know, look into my history too, it was kind of the same way. And it's like, why did I do things back then that I thought were okay to, you know, kind of give in or whatever, like you said, make things easier in whatever way. And it's just, this is about you at this point, you know, but when you have a baby, that's where you get that whole mama bear instinct, and everything is about your baby now and how to make sure that they stay safe and protected. And if that means you need to give up part of yourself, or you need to do something that you would not normally do, or you need to be a person that you never thought you were, that's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And then your body and all the things that your body can do. And you're like, oh, wow, my body is my body actually does all of these different things, not just this one thing. Mm-hmm. You know, my body can do so many things, and I respect it more now. And so maybe that means like other people might like suffer around me a little bit for a while, but oh, well.
Yeah. And our culture is definitely a very highly sexualized culture, and, you know, and that's fine. But then there's times where that's not the place. You know, there's a time and there's a place, and there are times where sex is just it's not in the cards.
Right.
It just doesn't fit in. And you're not a bad person for thinking that.
No, that's normal.
Yeah, it's very normal. So now everybody feels good about themselves, I hope. Everybody should feel good. Everybody should walk away from this going, yes, I feel good. Yes. I'm either going to be fine with it because I want to have sex, or fine with it because I don't want to have sex, and everybody's going to be okay with that.
Yep.
That's the way I want everybody to go out thinking right now.
That's right.
Yeah. And we will end on that note, because we'll end on a high note. And but if you have any questions, any comments, we'd love to hear from you. We've been getting some comments in between our podcasts, tapings and stuff. We've been doing some live Facebook feeds. So definitely check that out. Look for that too. And get in, ask us questions, send us emails. We're going to, you know, talk about some of this stuff on the podcast too. If questions come up, we're going to bring them up and we're going to talk about them. So we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
And everybody have a good week. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.